like to call to order the Township of North Huntington Board of Commissioners work session meeting to order for Thursday, July 11th at 7 p.m. Roll call, Manager Falk.
Commissioner Hempel. Here. Commissioner Hagus.
Here.
Commissioner Gray.
Here.
Commissioner Zona.
Here.
Commissioner Bevan.
Here.
Commissioner Goss.
Here.
President Atwood.
Here. Ask if you're able to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. At this time, if there is any citizen who'd like to offer input, I ask you sign the book at the podium. Before we start on citizens' input, thank you. I'd like to remind everybody that citizens will be able to offer their input. The board will then have a chance to respond in the next section of the meeting, and we do not do a back and forth between the board and the citizens at this point. Our first resident is Diana Steck. I ask you please come to the board and to the podium and state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. I'm Diana Steck. I live at 850 Linmore Drive in North Huntington. And I'm here tonight because I was concerned about fracking in the township. I am not sure. I was hoping to get some clarification regarding where the fracking may take place. I had heard that there was a possibility that Indian Lake and or Oak Hollow Park were being considered to be given a permit for lateral access for fracking. I would hope that during the course of this evening we could get some clarification about when and where and how that's going to happen. At any rate, both of those parks are near and dear to my heart. I walk my dog there at either one of them several days a week, and I have personal experience with the effects of fracking and fracking waste, having been a victim of environmental exposure from a previous residence. And there have been numerous studies from the Environmental Health Project, from the University of Pittsburgh, and Physicians for Social Responsibility that have documented that even if the fracking is done in a lateral aspect, that they're not actually drilling right there in that vicinity, that the wastes that come from fracking and the chemicals that they use during fracking can still contaminate the area. And there's also issues with air quality. And both of those parks are well utilized by township residents, dog walkers, children. Both have pavilions where families go. Our township doesn't have a lot of green space, and those are two areas that are well utilized by the residents. And I would really petition you to take a long, hard look at this. You know, I understand that townships like to get money from the oil and gas industry, but once they have polluted the area and made the residents sick, they've made their profit and they go on their way. And then we're left to deal with the fallout. And I think that the citizens of our township deserve better. And I would hope that you would consider all facts and look into the science behind it. And the other thing is, I'm not aware of ordinances that we have on the books pertaining to fracking, but I would really petition the board to consider enacting some protective ordinances, particularly to keep the wastes from being near residential areas, near homes. And when you look about our township, there aren't too many green space areas that aren't within close proximity to homes and schools. I think that the economic benefits do not outweigh the harm that could be done to, or they do, any economic benefits that you get from allowing fracking to take place in the township cannot replace the value of human lives. And in the University of Pittsburgh study, in particular, the one that looked at communities where there has been fracking, there was an increased incidence of childhood cancers, of asthma, of neurological problems, and I think we owe it to our residents to be proactive and not allow such to go on in our township. Thank you.
Our next resident is Tom Pike. Can you please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, please?
Good evening. My name is Tom Pike. I'm an environmental policy advocate with Protect PT. We're an organization that has 4 dues-paying members in North Huntington, and our address is 3344 PA 130 Suite A, Harrison City, PA 15636. So I'm here because one of our members in North Huntington alerted us to plans to lease the subsurface rights to public lands to Apex, which is a fracking corporation. I wanted to draw to your attention that Apex has logged 113 violations with the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection between 2018 and 2023. 96 of those were environmental, health, and safety violations. I am originally from Murraysville. I was pretty horrified last year when my hometown leased the subsurface rights to Duff Park. Duff Park was one of the only 3 suburban old-growth forests in Pennsylvania. They leased that to Olympus Energy. And earlier in 2015, Allegheny County Council decided to lease Deer Lakes Park's subsurface rights. Neither of these cases are we talking about anything different than what you're looking at. These are laterals. These are subsurface rights. They're not talking about putting the infrastructure in the parks. Nonetheless, in Deer Lakes Park in 2019, 4 years after that lateral was drilled, a team from Duquesne University discovered fracking surfactant chemicals in the surface waters of Deer Lakes Park. I'm happy to share that paper with anyone who's interested. I would have brought copies of it, but it's more than 100 pages thick. So what I'd say is I'd be happy to email it to any of you who want to read it. The short version is that these underground systems are hydrogeologically connected, and that chemicals that corporations inject underground do not necessarily stay there. So I'm not here to speak for the personal experiences of public park users. They can speak for themselves. What I can tell you is that Allegheny County residents sorely regretted leasing their public park to a private corporation for profit. Hundreds of them showed up in 2021 and 2022 demanding that no future leases be signed. A ban on fracking in public parks followed. Likewise, in Murraysville, a movement now exists to use a petition to force a vote of Murraysville Council to rescind some of their leases. Based on the track record of similar leases in our region, if you approve this lease, the community members who are here today will not just go away. This will remain an issue for years. If you don't want fracking surfactant chemicals ending up on the surfaces of public lands, and if you don't want to hear from the public about it for the next decade, please vote no on this motion. And then with my remaining time, I just want to draw your attention to some of the specific violations. And I will leave this with you, and I apologize in advance. The text is very small. I can send a digital version of this as well, which would be easier to read. One of these violations occurred on August 18th, 2020, unlawful conduct, drilling, altering, or operating a well without a permit, failure to comply with rules or regulations adopted under the Oil and Gas Act. Unlawful conduct on July 24th, 2020. On February 3rd, 2020, unlawful conduct, drilling, altering, or operating a well without a permit. On November 27th, 2019, unlawful conduct, drilling, altering, or operating a well without a permit. On November 5th, 2019, unlawful conduct, drilling, altering, or operating a well without a permit. On November 1st, 2019, unlawful conduct, drilling, altering, or operating a well without a permit. On August 14th, 2019, incidents causing or threatening pollution, failure to notify the department of an accident or other activity or incident, a toxic substance or another substance which would endanger downstream users of the waters, result in pollution, or create a danger of the pollution of waters of this Commonwealth, or would damage property. On August 14th, 2019, prohibition against discharge of industrial waste discharged into waters of the Commonwealth. August 14th, 2019, prohibition against other pollutions, discharged substance of any kind or character resulting in pollution of waters of the Commonwealth. This goes on. There are also a number that are along these lines. April 27th, 2023, operating wells, mechanical integrity of operating wells. Operator failed to meet minimum requirements for inspections to determine compliance with the well construction and operating requirements. On October 26th, 2022, failure to plug the well upon abandoning it. There are several that match that description. There are also some of these notes, such as this one on October 26, 2022, that note, as of this inspection, none of the violations have been addressed, therefore the violations will continue. Again, on August 10th, 2022, violations will continue, noted in 2 separate violations. I don't need to read this entire thing. I will leave it with you. The purpose of me reading from this is I want you to consider who you're doing business with. And on that, I will thank you for your time, and I'll leave this with you.
Thank you. Our next resident is Katie Forsyth. Can you please come to the podium and state your name and address for the record, please?
Hi, my name is Katie Forsyth. I live at 1441 Guffey Road in North Huntington. I am here to voice my concern not just to my commissioner of the 3rd Ward, but to every commissioner here, in concern of the consideration of openly having our parks be accessed to being drilled. Oak Hollow Park, Indian Lake Park, they're both parks that are beautiful areas and heavily used by the residents of our township. Each have pavilions. Those pavilions are used by residents of the township from anywhere from birthday parties to graduations. Again, at the Oak Hollow facility, you have multiple soccer fields, which youth play at all summer long, all spring. Also, at the Oak Hollow facility, there is athletic fields that I have seen softball games. I have seen frisbee throwing contests. It's a place where residents can enjoy the natural beauty of our township without the noise and the traffic and the pollution that is sometimes associated with our crowded township anymore. The park in itself, and I'm coming from a personal point of view, not from a technical point of view from the speaker who preceded me, is that they are beautiful areas and they are an amazing asset to our township. That is, I think, in my estimation of the people that are gravitating to our township, it is one of our best calling cards. Especially for people who have children. I hope that you will reconsider or consider the petitions of the community that is speaking out at this to not disturb the beautiful jewel that serves us from anywhere from movie night to end of the summer celebrations. As a previous speaker said, the adverse effects far outweigh anything that we can be compensated for signing over our land to a drilling company. The chemicals used alone in the fracking process don't stay in the earth. That's non-convert. No one can contradict that. They raise to the surface. It's our geologic, survey around here. So in knowing that and knowing the consequences of this toxic, waste that comes from them causes cancer, respiratory problems, it just shouldn't be questioned that we allow anything that would damage our community, the residents of our community, to be in our community. So I ask you to vote against any kind of drilling in any public space and be good stewards of our public land and of the residents that count on you to watch over their welfare. So thank you for listening.
Thank you. Our next resident is Patricia Oliver. As you come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Patricia Oliver. My address is 10220 Lavon Drive in North Huntington. I didn't intend to speak. I thought it was a sign-in. But while I'm here and I have your attention, I agree with everything they have said. This is a company that isn't going to bring anything good into our community. If you feel that the small amount of money that they can contribute, why don't you put it on to the voters? Why don't you, and I think you can initiate a referendum. Put it on the ballot. I don't know if, I mean, I can come up with a petition with 20,000 names. If that would sway you, I can easily do that. I spent the day talking to neighbors, Republicans, Democrats, Independents. I couldn't find one person in Country Hills that agreed with this. So I'm asking you to vote no. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else like to offer public input that did not get a chance to sign the book? Moving on to response to citizens' input. It seems all four people who were speaking about the Apex lease. Without objection, we could speak with it then. Thank you. Work session discussion topics. Manager Falk.
Item number 1, the sports complex ground lease. I have Josh Zugai and his associate here tonight to go over the lease with the Board of Commissioners. Turn it over to Mr. Zugai.
Yeah, before you guys get up,
Yep.
I want to just make some initial comments. Before you guys get up, I want to make some initial comments. I've been doing this business for more than 2 weeks, somewhere in the neighborhood of 51 years. I want you to know that I've only had one occasion where a municipality leased a 99-year lease to a baseball association. That's the only time I've ever seen a lease of that length assigned. I say that to you because there's kind of a backdrop to this. I have not talked to any of the commissioners here. I haven't talked to Harry. I've not talked to anybody on this board. I feel that I want to make sure we're all singing out of the same choir book. I think everybody likes the idea of having a sports complex in North Huntington. I think it's a great idea. It was put to a referendum years ago and was voted down, but I still think it's a great idea. With that being said, if you enter into a private lease, there's no requirement to go through public bidding. However, here versus a sale, if you sell the property, you have to go through public bidding. You get an appraisal and you publicly bid it, and the highest bidder can be awarded the contract. My suggestion to you is, though, you don't have to do anything if you don't like the bids under public bidding. In this case, we're talking about a 90-year lease that may be arguable that it is a real transfer of ownership of the property. It's not just a 2-year lease or a 1-year lease. And it's possible that someone will argue you can't go through this process without going through a public bid if you're going to divest yourself of the property for 90 years. And I say that's what people do. I mean, if somebody wanted to challenge your decision to grant a 90-year lease, that would be the argument they may make. we hear this word over and over and over again, transparency. And I can see someone making the argument downtown, saying, look, township was not transparent in this matter. They deeded this over for 90 years. That might ring a bell with the judge saying, look, you should really go through public bidding on this matter. I've gone through this lease 3 or 4 times. I've made notes. I have copies here for everybody. I have little side comments on it. I seriously wonder what somebody 25 years from now would say when you say that you've entered into this 90-year lease. If a Board of Commissioner was on there, what's he going to say? And I think that's something you have to decide before you swim down the stream on this. It would be simple if we deeded the property over. In other words, go through public bidding and deed the property over after we get an appraisal and find out what it's worth. And you set that as the minimum price for the property. At that point, you will have complied with the municipality's planning code and the code that you are under in the government. This 40 acres may be developable by somebody, and somebody may come in and say, hey, if you're going to offer for sale to X, Y, and Z, I want to bid on it too. And so you would probably have a bidding that would be closed to the extent that the folded envelopes, nobody knows who bid, and the lowest bidder gets it. That puts the applicant in jeopardy because he may not bid lowest. I don't know what would happen if we did this. Is Schuster going to come in and say, hey, you're going to give him 40 acres. I want to try to develop that, and I'm willing to buy it. I think it's important to know that this 90-year lease is really a long, long time. And if it's your intention to give it to somebody, a for-profit industry, for payments of $1 a year, then go ahead and do it. And again, that's for the purpose is a good one. It's a noble purpose, and I won't belate that point. The point is, you've got to recognize that this commitment is substantial, and I think you would be well served to go through some sort of public bidding process, even if it's going to be a 90-year lease. Because again, I think some court's going to say, you know, in reality, 90-year leases are really a transfer of ownership in so many words. I can't get around that. Will the judge decide that way? I don't know. I've researched this, and I'm still going after it. I have not found any cases that deals with this situation where a municipality went through a 90-year lease and that there was some litigation over it. I haven't found it. It doesn't mean it isn't there. We're still looking. I get the impression that we're in a hurry. And my problem with the hurriness is that if it was 2 weeks versus 90 years, I'd have no problem. But this is a commitment that you're going to make for your fathers down the road that they're going to have to live with. And if that's what you want to do, I think you should consider going through a public bidding process. I know that the applicant won't be happy with that because they may not get it. That doesn't mean, if you go through the process and you don't like the bids, you can reject them. You don't have to accept any bid. Even if it's $250,000, you can say, no, well, I'm not doing it. So you control whether or not you want to enter into that long-term lease. That's one backdrop. The other backdrop is, this is represented to us as a ground lease. Again, I've been doing this for more than 2 weeks. Ground leases are 2 or 3 or 4 pages long. This document has a series of things in it that I would take out and not be part of a ground lease. It complicates things substantially. It's one of the more complicated leases that I've read in the past few years. I have comments by paragraph if we want to go through this paragraph by paragraph. But I think that exercise comes after you decide, yeah, we want to do this. But I think you have to tell us you're okay with either doing it the way we're doing it now, i.e. a ground lease, 90 years. We can walk through this agreement with the applicants, and I would suggest with the applicant's attorney, and try to come up with a document that at least satisfies me as your attorney. That's not to say I'm all-knowing. It just means that I think there's a lot of paragraphs in there, and I can point them out to you if you want to go through paragraph by paragraph, that shouldn't be in the ground lease. It's not lease talk. Condemnation. It's got language about assignments. It's got all kinds of different things that we don't have. Mortgages. We're actually getting married to this company. If you sign this document, you get married about 10 times. And there'd be probably 25 divorces over it all. My suggestion is that, you don't want to be bound by their mortgage companies. You want it to be a lease. Here's your piece of property. You pay us $1 a year, and we have a series of ordinances and resolutions that are in place that deal with subdivision, deal with condemnation, deal with all the subjects that are in here that just don't belong in the lease. A paragraph in a lease that says, you will abide by all our ordinances and resolutions. Yeah, that's the kind of document that you should be seeing, not as intricate as this document is. And again, that's no reflection. I'm making a comment based upon my history and based upon what I've read. And so I see it as a two-step process. First, you have to decide, okay, this is what we want to do. If you do, I would suggest that you send us out with the document, and let me pass it out. I've made the comments on the side. And I can meet with their counsel, I can sit with anybody you tell me to, and try to work through this to shorten the load. There we go. Now, maybe I'm overstepping my bounds, and I appreciate that. If you say so, I'll shut up. But I want everybody to know how I feel about what I see. And it's certainly your decision. That's why you guys are making all that money, $50 a month, $50 a month.
Mr. President, if I could comment first. Thank you, Mr. Dice, for your comments. I appreciate them more than I can say. First, I believe...
You and I have not talked.
No, we have not. But I've made it clear, I voted against the original agreement, the exclusive negotiation agreement. I was the only one that voted against that. So it may have given you a sense of where I stand on this. But one correction, I believe you referred to 90-year lease, but it's the lease would be a 29-year lease with a possibility of 3 extensions, which would total 116 years, over a century. And as far as the document goes, you said you made notes in there. I read the same thing, highlighted many things in it, but without going into details about the agreement, this, I think we all got the same one, right? It was 38 pages. 38 pages in the agreement. In this hand, I hold the 38 pages of the agreement. In this hand, I hold what I believe is beneficial to the township residents. See that? Nothing in it. It has so much in there, restrictions, and just no benefit whatsoever. So at this point, although the township already signed the exclusive agreement to negotiate there's also a statement in there that the landlord may elect to terminate the negotiations for the ground lease at any time during the contingency period. And I would like to see it on the agenda next week for a formal vote to terminate negotiations. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to, thanks, Mr. Solicitor, that was informative, and no, we didn't talk about it either, but I really appreciate your input, and, I mean, I'm still okay with moving forward. I agree that not with this agreement, I would like the sides to get together and work out something that's a little more trimmed down, and as you said, Bruce, that fits a lot of those things you said, but I'm still in agreement. I think if this thing is built and it's in our township, I think there's a lot of benefit to the township. We sit here month after month after month with citizens that come in to complain that there's nothing for kids to do, and I always argue against it and say there is a lot to do, but I think it has a lot of benefit to have that facility in our township. So I am still open-minded to that, and I'm still okay with moving forward and seeing what we can do.
Yeah. I'll be open to keeping the, discussions going, but I was kind of taken back, not to kind of echo what Mr. Gray said, but there wasn't one thing in here that I see that the residents get a benefit from. I looked at this from initially that, as Commissioner Zona said, there was a lot of talk about recreation, sports, activities for the children. But there's no type of thing saying that, the township would have access to this facility on certain days of the week or let seniors use it for silver sneakers or anything like that. None of that's in this lease. If that was their intentions, it would be in there. I do have a problem too with the amount of years. For the fact that we're leasing the property for nothing basically for that amount of years, I would agree with the solicitor. It's basically selling the land for nothing. And like I echoed a point I think before, it'd be no different if we would lease this land to a business, because this organization is going to be a business. They're going to lease their facilities out to recreational sports teams, and they're going to make a profit on it. So they're going to be making a profit off our residents, which they might not have to travel as far to go where they might take their kids currently, but they'll be making a profit off of the township and our residents. And I don't see anything that benefits the residents in this lease at all.
If I may, I'm going to have to agree with Commissioner Higgis because of the fact of basically the same thing he mentioned. And, I'm around in the community a lot, and I have a lot of residents coming up when they read the newspaper article initially about the Riverhounds, and of course it kind of really, if you read that and what people were saying to me, was it kind of like almost like a done deal. I assured them that, we were talking, but really, we really haven't been talking. If you think about the last time we really talked, other than the agreement, and and with this agreement, I'll have to, like I said, agree. There's really nothing in here saying our residents in North Huntington are going to benefit by this. I'd love to see verbiage, something in writing, because I'm hearing from residents that they're saying that they've been to other facilities and, well, we can't accommodate you because we're all filled up, come back a month from now. So that's kind of discouraging when you hear that. Whether it's true or not, I don't know, but there again, it's comments. So, but there is still a lot in this that needs spoken about. And, what I'm thinking of is this 120 days. We're already into 60 days of those 120. There's not too much time that we have left to negotiate, and then what I'm afraid of is that 120 days is going to come, and then we're going to be bound. So, so that's where I'll say.
I think at this point, it might be beneficial to have Mr. Zugai and Mr. Ponsby come up and answer the questions that we have. I feel at this point, if there's no objection, we can have a dialogue back and forth between the gentleman and the board.
Yeah, so my name is David Ponsonby, 2482 Myers Lane, North Huntington, PA.
Yeah, Josh Zugai, 140 Charles Drive, North Huntington, Pennsylvania.
So to the fact on the lease agreement, we sent it over on June 18th. Rough draft, hey, first lease. We were told to send over a lease agreement. We went to our attorney group, said, hey, can we get over a boilerplate land lease to the township so we could start going back and forth and working it out. We sent that over on the 18th and had 0 comment back. We thought at that point, we would get response back from the township on comments on the lease. We wanted to send more than less. We didn't want to go into a document saying, hey, you don't have this, you don't have this, you don't have this. We'd love to scale that lease agreement way back. I mean, there's nothing in the lease that is mandatory for us to have in, but we thought we were going to enter negotiations back and forth with the township, red lines back and forth. We have received no red lines, so we're not aware of any of this information. We're doing this for the township, so we see a lot of benefit for the township in this. As far as the lease goes, unless we get red lines back and comments back, we're not aware of what your expectation is in it and what it isn't. As far as keep saying it's a 120-year lease, it is actually a 29-year lease with renewal options. So in 29 years, the board has the opportunity to renew the lease. So to keep saying it's a 99-year lease is not correct unless we execute the full term of the lease and we meet requirements that are set forth in the lease that could be redlined and addressed in the lease, or there could be requirements that we have to meet to renew the term. So to keep saying that it's a 99, 116-year lease is not true. First term's 29-year lease. And the requirements that we could put into that lease can simply be added in when we go back and forth in negotiations in our lease. None of this is really a surprise. It was all in our LOI, what we were asking for, and that was what we voted on 2 months ago, which was the lease payment we were looking for, the lease terms. So that was not a surprise that them terms were in our lease because we had that in our letter of intent. But as far as what we would like to see in the lease, yes, our attorneys were expecting red lines back from the township solicitor. We haven't received anything back. So we were not aware that there was anything you were looking for in the lease specifically. And I think moving forward, our attorneys are expecting to have conversation with township solicitor to clarify what expectations are for the township to be in this lease. We want it to be a good program for the township and for us. I mean, we really feel that it's going to benefit the community and everybody greatly. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, and I'd like to clarify kind of the issues that were brought up individual by individual. Solicitor Dice, during the original meeting and discussion and the presentation of the LOI, the main criticism was that it wasn't a full lease. It wasn't fleshed out. There wasn't enough information to make a decision, kind of see how it would be structured. So we kind of went overboard with that, taking your comments from the initial meeting to fill out a full commercially acceptable document. And that's what our attorneys have done. This is not the first public-private land lease deal involving multi-sport facilities they've done. I've been working commercial finance and banking and real estate for nearly 20 years. There was nothing in that document to me that's outside of commercial bounds for this type of arrangement. I did not find it to be excessive. I thought there was a lot of detail, just so there weren't many gray areas. Commissioner Gray, as David alluded to, it is not the 116-year lease, it's a 29-year lease. With the renewable options. Those are commercially reasonable terms that are required by banks to raise money to build these types of facilities. The banks would need that kind of comfort, and we would need that kind of comfort to go to the market to raise tens of millions of dollars, which we would bring into the community to build these facilities for our children and for our future, right? There has to be some form of comfort there for a senior lender plus equity investors to put that money in, to know that there's a runway in which the lease would stand, and you could generate a reasonable payback period, which would be 25 to 30
I
years.
understand that, sir, but it also gives you a guarantee of doing that. If you choose, not if we choose,
I'm sorry, can you clarify, who chooses what?
to extend the lease, to
I
renew
believe
the
it's
lease.
mutually agreeable. It has to be negotiated on both sides.
It says the option, okay.
Yeah.
And like I said,
That may
the
be a
lease has-
legal
It's
issue,
in section
but
2.4. It's the tenant's right to do it, so we wouldn't have the opportunity to say no. from
Right.
What the current was proposed to us. I'm
Right.
not saying that we
And-
couldn't change that, but that's what's proposed to
And
us, that
that's
you
what
would have
we-
the right to do so.
And I think that's the biggest issue here is we're all looking at a lease that was not ever redlined back to us. So there was no commissioner input on the lease that we sent over. We sent over one draft. Obviously, there was some red line from the solicitor. We've never seen that red line for us to even come back and say, hey, we agree with it. Let's change it. Let's then represent. That opportunity was never given to us.
And here we are.
And here we are, kind of looking at information that I think we probably would have agreed with a lot of the red line comments, and we haven't been given that opportunity to look at it yet. So we're asking that we get your red line request over at the end of the month, and then we'll submit a new lease agreement, and then we go to vote next month on an updated lease agreement with the red line request from the commissioners. That's what we're asking for.
And I also, to go back on issue by issue brought up, Solicitor Dice, you mentioned just, I think as an example, the Schuster Company coming in and bidding on that property. They owned
if
that
they
property at one time. They owned it. They turned it back over to the township, I believe, for a very nominal amount, maybe $1, for a deed transfer. That property has sat there relatively idle, except for the Public Works facility and the 250 celebration idle. Commercial developers have deemed that undevelopable. Otherwise, they're not going to give the property back. We found an opportunity to work with a group of companies through connections that we've made in our business dealings, who are willing to evaluate making that property commercially viable, because they move dirt very, very efficiently. It's an opportunity for us to bring that kind of resource to the township, but we're not getting it over on someone. This property was given back by RWS Homes in the 90s or 2000s.
And I think if that was going to be what you were going to recommend to the board, I think that should have been before we got to the LOI stage. Because going into the LOI, it was very clear that we were looking for a land lease of them years. And for us to not just now be bringing that up is kind of confusing for us, because we haven't got any engagement back on our lease. So I think we're going to stick with what we're asking for
That's
and
fine.
kind of move from there.
And
That's acceptable.
You have, throughout this event, there has been the pressure to get this done. I feel no pressure to get it done quickly, given the fact that this leaves in your hands this property for over 100 years. That's the biggest problem. And the other thing I'm concerned about is, if we do this, do we go through public bidding to do it, to lease it to them? Because again, I think you're going to have a resident saying, wait a minute, this is really a transfer of property, and as such should be publicly bid. And what would be cleaner for everybody is if you did deed the property over. I mean, from a legal standpoint, sell it to them. Get it out of your hair.
That was not
I'm talking to my board, okay? I'm not asking whether you like the idea. It doesn't matter to me whether you like the idea.
Nope.
I'm just
Appreciate
suggesting to you that that's the clean way to do business here. This complicated lease, I mean, you have paragraphs in there that says we can't disclose stuff. We have rights to know laws. You can't put stuff like that in our documents. You've got stuff about condemnation. I mean, I don't know who invented, some lawyer worked it over and did a nice job. I'm just suggesting to you, there's paragraph after paragraph in there that I have trouble with. And again, if what the board suggests is we sit down and have the attorneys try to work it out, I'll be glad to do that. I just don't want to spend the time and the effort if you're not going to do this. Or are you going to publicly bid it? And have you thought about just selling it to them and get rid of all this complication? I mean, that's just something you all should decide for your forefathers coming down the street here 20 years from now. I mean, this is a leap of faith, and I like the idea. Don't get me wrong. I think sports centers are the greatest thing in the world. But you're going to be giving up control of this property for a long time and not really get anything other than a sports complex that may or may not benefit, and I think it will benefit, the township residents. Enough said. I don't want to act like I have a predisposition, because I don't. I just suggest to you, this is a momentous decision that you guys should talk about and think about, and I don't want to be pressured by the applicant or any board member to say, hey, we got to get this done right now. That doesn't bother me in the least when the effect of this is 100 years.
The only push on our end was we were limited by the commissioners to a 120-day exclusivity period.
Okay, but we can
That's
extend those
therefore our
things.
rush. I'm not in a rush to do this. I would like to do it right. It's going to take a lot of planning. We're
I
not
agree.
trying to push it.
And
We
I
were
think
asked to be
everybody here is
tonight.
willing to
We did
extend
not-
those times.
We were asked to be here tonight. We did not ask to be here tonight.
I was asked to be here too. I understand. Okay.
But back to the case by case, Commissioner Zona, I agree, it does need to be trimmed down. It's excessive. I would like a very simple, clean document. We started down that path with the LOI. We were criticized, so we built out a bigger document, and now I see that the pendulum swing too far. Commissioner Haggis, so as far as specific wording benefiting the community, I'm with you. So we're just negotiating the ground lease and the leases that will be negotiated by the subtenants who actually operate the facilities, the fields. That is where that negotiation wording will be. And that is Dave and I's commitment as residents of this community. Our parents live here, our children play sports here, to do that. But that is not done in this document. That is done with the subtenants on what entities, who gets access, those items. And we have to go and negotiate that. And if that's not acceptable to the subtenant, then we need to find a new subtenant, clearly. But that wording does not pertain to a ground lease for that facility. This just gives us the right to go get those subtenants who we would deem, and we could certainly work with you guys and.
And I understand that, but it's not in this lease. There's no guarantee that we would get that with the subtenants. And that's all the ultimate
But
issue.
Back to the
We can-
lease, this is still draft one of our lease.
No, I understand.
So I really think we're, quite frankly, wasting a lot of time here with this first draft of the lease, if we haven't got any red lines back from.
If I may, the public forum is the correct space to have this conversation. So this is the appropriate time to have these dialogues so that it is done in public in front of everybody for transparency, rather than behind closed doors.
Yeah.
So this is just us talking back and forth. I don't think there's any hostility among anyone up here towards you guys or back. We're just having this dialogue right now to start it. So I think the public forum is the appropriate place to have it. So that's
Yeah,
why
I don't think we were clarified on that coming in, so it
Yeah.
felt a lot of questioning in the agreement that we didn't get to clarify anything on. So we weren't really aware that that's where we were at with this. Because at the same time, we definitely,
Yeah, a lot of good, valid points were brought up tonight. I tried to take notes, and I wanted to make sure I addressed them individually, because they are part of our consideration. This isn't something we're taking lightly. Dave is working on this around the clock with various interested parties, trying to pull this all together, should the lease be approved. So I appreciate the feedback. This is very valuable to us.
President Atwood, if it's okay with the board, I mean, I know I said I was comfortable working with, your outfit and working on the ground lease and maybe working with some of the questions maybe we both might have. I believe Commissioner Hempel said he was okay with that. I mean, I know that's 3. I know Commissioner Gray was probably okay with just kind of pushing it to the side for now. But, I mean, if someone else is in favor of doing that, I would suggest we just move forward and working with your attorney and your outfit and maybe getting some of the questions back and then with whatever timetable that might take, and then we could come back and discuss it. And if we're working up against that 120 days, we could always postpone that back a little bit if we
You
need a
can
little
always
bit more time.
extend it.
Yeah.
I just want to make one comment. You made reference to the assignments and sub-assignments. Here's what the lease says. The tenant may, without any prior consent of you, the landlord, assign this lease and its affiliates and subsidiaries and successors. So it gives the tenants the rights, without your consent, to make assignments. And those are the little idiosyncrasies that's through this whole document. You know, I have to sit down with their lawyer and say, hey, look, that's not fair. That doesn't give the township anything to say about it. I mean, I can do that. This is going to be a several-hour task. I just want everybody to hear that. And that's okay with me. Everybody's trying to put a good effort in this. If you're so direct, I'll sit down with them.
Is there a consensus to
Yeah, like I
move
said,
forward
we
with
had
that? I'm good
3.
with
Yeah, I'm
that.
okay with that. And we can work with your, like I said, corporation outfit and your attorneys. And
Why
see
don't
what
you
we
have
can get.
somebody give me a jingle? Call me.
Harry, you
I'll-
could probably reach out to them and give them Bruce's
And
information.
does anybody from the board want to be at this negotiation?
I think I think you're the proper one to be
Well,
there, or
there's no
someone
question.
from your
And
firm, and
Harry.
then you bring it back to us.
Yeah, and Harry could
I don't think it's productive to have us that
Probably not.
don't know how to write a contract
Right.
up like that.
I agree with that.
I think that would be more hindrance than helpful.
Thank you, gentlemen.
My only question that I had that wasn't brought up was who has the final say on the development of the land? I just wanted to make sure that, you know, it's not their plan or the highway, you know, like we can make sure the land structure, land and everything that is gonna be developed is, you know, is up to standards, up to even higher standards, you know, in order to make sure that this is gonna work right.
Yeah, and I think all of that can be structured in our lease with checks and balances between what we propose and what is acceptable to the township and community. And I think we expect to see a lot of them checks and balances coming from the commissioners in that lease agreement. But like I said, boilerplate, first commercial land lease, we wanted to get over to you, get something going, so we could start the negotiation conversation, because we don't know what the expectation really was from the commissioners. It seems like all commissioners really want this project in the township, and we are heavily involved in our sports community in our township, me and Josh. So we have a personal, we really want to see this for our community. So I think keeping the checks and balances within the lease, I think with Solicitor Bruce Dice and our attorneys, I think we can navigate the checks and balances to make sure, you know, in the 29-year, when it comes to the 29-year term, that, hey, did they live up to what they said they were going to do? Did we check all the boxes? Yes, then it's an easy vote in 29 years to renew our term. If we didn't check the boxes, then yeah, we have to sit in front of the board again and explain why they didn't get checked and why the property is not being renewed to us.
How would that work with your financing, the banks?
That's why we have to go for 29 years, because 29 years is what we can finance out to. So if we have guaranteed terms of 29 years, whatever financing we take on personally would come due at 29 years, we would be clear of. So that's why our banks are, and Josh could probably speak on
Yeah,
this.
and if there was gonna be a refinancing after that period, that next lease would have to be executed to be financeable. That's it. So those tranches make sense, that time period makes sense. That's how the banks work, that's what they would wanna see. And that pushes us all back to the negotiating table at that 28, 29-year mark to know if we're gonna renew or not, to know whether the facility has to sit as it is, just based on organic cash flow, or if there's a refinance to redo the roof, whatever it may be. That's just how the timing works on it. And there'd be no financing without that second layer of the lease.
Bruce, Since you read from the agreement section, am I to take that this agreement is public?
Not yet. Not until it's executed. There is a paragraph in there that says everything will be confidential, which has to be struck because you can't do that. Okay, but that's a separate item. It becomes a public record when you sign it,
Yeah. And
and everyone
there's no
gets
issue
to see
from
it.
us on that. So that's perfectly fine with us.
So there's no doubt there is a learning curve here. You guys are new to us, we're new to you.
Sure.
So we have to do what we call the dance. We have to establish our extreme left and extreme right limits. And we don't go outside of those limits. And then we do the dance within those limits, and we refine, and we simplify, going from 38 pages down to 4 pages or something like that. That's where the lawyers come in and do their thing. Us sitting up here, this guy, I'll tell you something, I believe that this is something that everybody wants in the township. I've only had one phone call that was a matter of concern on light and noise after so many hours of operation during the day. That's the only concern I've had. Other than that, I've had nothing but positive results from the constituents in the townships in regard to the wanting of this complex. Just throwing it out there. What if you guys were to build, and I know that this goes beyond what I'm about to say, the land lease. What if you were to build a building fully dedicated to the people of this township and only us? And then you have your fields and stuff like that. But here, it's a consideration, right? Give a little, take a little.
Yeah, no, and I think.
You see what I'm saying? Where our constituents would have a facility that they wouldn't have to pay anything, or maybe something very minimal for the year. But it would be your complex, but our little building for our people. So that way our township people get something in return for this. And I don't want to say quid pro quo, because there's somebody out there listening and saying, Eric, that's quid pro quo. But if I'm saying it publicly, it's not so bad, right? It shouldn't be bastardized. But it's just a thought that has come to my mind.
And our thought process on that was the field usage and how we were gonna do the field. So our commitment moving forward was, from lease execution, was to have the first public field within 18 months. Was going to be the first dedicated North Huntington Township outdoor field.
Yeah, not a Riverhounds facility, not a third-party facility. This was a North Huntington youth sports, North Huntington community field for
North
use.
Huntington people.
And
Yes.
that is what our goal is from the start.
That has not changed.
And that has been what we've been shooting for this whole time. 18 months from lease execution, we have an outdoor field for the township. I know we need it for our youth football program. I'm heavily involved with our youth football program, and we are struggling right now for football fields. So I'm already working with our program on what makes sense financially for our program to pay to maintain a field of that nature, and what we are already paying of a field of that nature. So, and it's same with the high school and everything else. That is our commitment to the township, is we're going to bring within 18 months an outdoor field that we have not had yet, that Northern Youth Lacrosse will have access to, Northern Youth Football will have access to. All of our programs in the community will have access to this multi-use field. Obviously, it's going to be more of a football, soccer, lacrosse field at first, but as we're evolving this with our master plan, we are definitely, we have a lot of interest from baseball in the community since this came out. We've had a lot of community residents reach out and say, hey, where can this fit in? And we are currently working with our engineer group on a broader master plan to how can we incorporate, our baseball programs, our volleyball, our basketball programs, because our sons are in all the sports. So we talk to all the programs and they're saying, hey, where can we get basketball at down here? Where can we get this? And it does strike us and we want it, but at the same time, everything costs money, right? And if we could just build everything down there for every program to have a free access, free fields, we would do it, but
it's not possible.
it's not possible. Everything's very expensive these days and everybody knows that. And we're trying to walk to where we can get a field for the township, and then a field for the soccer program. But our first school, first field down there will be a North Huntington Township field. And we have a local sponsor in the community that is funding the majority of the project as well. So, and that's all what we can, as we evolve.
In addition to that, we've been working with Norwin-based, North Huntington-based NGOs to add various projects that benefit the community. I don't know if I'm able to disclose those or not, but they've been in these meetings, we've met closely, and we're working together. They're all part of it.
But like Commissioner Haggis has said, we are definitely open to continuing conversation back and forth. We're not the attorneys or lawyers here, so a lot of the wordage in that document is over our head as well, but that's why we all rely on our attorneys and solicitors, so that they can iron that out for us, and I think we will be able to find a mutual agreement between the checks and bounds of the agreement with you guys and us to bring this project to life. Obviously, we're in a hurry because we want to see it come to life, but we know, that we need to do it right, and if it takes an extra 60, 90 days, as long as the board's open to that, we're open to that as well. But we do want to see it keep moving to keep everybody interested and excited about it. But yeah, that's all we have for now. If anybody else has any questions.
Just have them call me.
I think at this point, there's consensus that the attorneys can go through the lease and get something back to us here in the next,
Hopefully, yeah.
whenever, how long lawyer stuff takes.
We'll work diligently.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
All right, item number 2, lease agreement with Apex Energy. At the last month's meeting, this lease was tabled. There were some questions about whether and if we can negotiate more money. I did ask Zane to be here tonight for the board to have any questions or further questions about the lease before it goes to vote. And to go back to some of the citizens' comments earlier, the board, some of the older members may recall back in 2013 and 2014, Oak Hollow Park and Braddock's Trail, the subsurface leases were already leased with Huntley and Huntley. So that was already done about 10 years ago. So I'll turn it over to,
Are those leases in perpetuity or whatever, it's forever?
I have
Do
not,
they expire?
I have not reviewed them wholeheartedly, but I
There's usually
did
an
just do
expiration
a
date.
skim.
I believe most of them are within, I think, 10 years. Gentleman with Apex will probably correct me, but I believe most gasoline leases, if they don't drill
In 5 years or something.
5 to 10 years, then
I
they
can
have to
answer.
renew the lease.
That's correct.
So Zane Kessler from Apex Energy.
Excuse me, can I,
Not ready
point
yet?
of order before
I'm
he-
sorry, forgive me.
Last month, this was tabled. I believe a motion to remove it from the table is appropriate before we discuss it.
Yes, I was going to call for, does anyone have a motion to remove from the table so we can discuss?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it for the information that we're going to be receiving here tonight.
Sure. A motion by Commissioner Haggis and a second by Commissioner Hempel. All those in favor by stating aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Matter is now placed back on the table. Looking for any commissioners who would have any questions or would like asked.
What, was this, the lease looked at by somebody who specializes in gas leases? As I believe Oak Hollow was and Braddock's Trail.
I did not do that.
Thank you.
So just for educational purposes, ladies and everybody that came up and spoke, Diana, Tom, Katie, and Patricia, I want to thank you all for coming up here and speaking about this. Any movement in the community is always a concern. It should be, from every constituent, every board of commissioner, to every person and every administration or business that wants to come into the community. It is good to have these open facilities to speak about. We have concerns. We don't always get the facts, but we all have the concerns, and I get that. Last month, when this gentleman came and spoke, and this is not me in favor of, this is not me against, but educational-wise, if I recall, the drill down point is 5,000 feet.
8,000.
8,000 feet. 8,000 feet. Your average water well, am I saying that right, or where you would draw your water?
But no, not usually more than 500 feet.
500, maybe to 800 max?
Yeah, yeah.
But you guys are gonna go straight down 8,000 feet, and then you're gonna go out. And if memory serves me right, the pipe, now this is just education, please, bear with me, because we can only make good decisions based on good information, okay? I understand about feelings and emotions, and too many times feeling and emotions get involved with things, and people don't hear what they should hear to make a good decision. They're going down 8,000 feet. They're gonna bend that line out, then they're gonna shoot that line out. If I recall, that line was only gonna be 8 inches,
6.5 inches in diameter.
6.5 inches in diameter.
Yeah, sorry.
The source that you guys are gonna use to penetrate the earth is gonna be water.
Well, they
And air.
drill down 8,000 feet.
Yes,
They pull out the original drill bit. They go back in with a motorized head
right.
drill bit with multiple bits on it. They speed up one side and slow down the other, and it takes a quarter of a mile to make the 90-degree turn to be able to drill through the center of the shale. The
Yeah.
shale is between 225 and 250 feet thick. So they drill down 8,000 feet, then they turn and drill horizontally through the center of that shale.
Right.
I didn't mean to walk
don't-
up here out of line. I came up before you called me, so forgive me, sorry.
Not at all. Thank you. I just want to put this statistical information and the facts in the minutes, and for everybody to know that this is before we start drawing conclusions and having concerns, that we know that our information's factual. 8,000 feet down, where it will not affect well water. Well water is typically drilled between 500 and 800 feet. And what we're looking at, the borehole is only 6.5 inches. If I'm not mistaken, you guys also pull out what we call gray water. Is that correct?
Well, they pump high-pressure water down in first,
Right,
but that's,
which is potable water.
right. And then when it comes back out, it is contaminated.
It is contaminated.
It has, for every 1 million gallons of water that's pumped down there, there's only 5% of it that's frac fluid that
Okay.
has the toxic chemicals in it that the people that are concerned about.
The toxic chemicals, are they organic to the earth? Is that what it is, or is that a man-made produced toxicity?
I'm not a petroleum engineer. I can't answer
Okay.
that question.
All right.
I can only tell you that how I describe it to people when I meet them to talk about a gas lease at their home.
Yes,
I tell them that it's kind of like Drano. Because if you have an older home that has clay pipe drains that are in sections, roots can grow in between them sometimes. And when that happens, people go get a gallon of sulfuric acid and dump it down in that drain to eat into the roots to cause a water flow till they can dig it up and fix it. Well, the way fracking works is when they finish drilling the horizontal well, the well bore is a 6.5-inch casing. It's a solid casing. There's no holes in it yet. They plug the very end of it with cement. It's filled with cement at the tail end when they're at the end of the drilling. Then the next step is they perforate the casing. So they send down a rail line assembly down in through the pipe, the casing, and they'll do a section at a time where they will perforate the casing. The perforation is done with high-intensity gas charges. So it's not dynamite, it's high-intensity gas charges, like an acetylene torch burns holes through metal. They set off the high-intensity gas charges for so many feet, let's say 400 feet at a time. They set those charges off. That burns little holes all around the casing so that whenever they pump water down in there, the water has to have a place to go. But the next step after they perforate the casing is they then send down frac fluid, a few hundred gallons of frac fluid. It goes out through the casing And the shale is organically rich. When they pump that frac fluid in, it goes out through the holes and it creates cavities on the outside of the casing. So when they pump the high-pressure water with a little bit of sand in it down there, it goes out through those holes into the cavities, and then it expands outward in all directions, all around the casing, to create the pressure to crack the shale open. The fracking was brought to Pennsylvania by the Penn State Geology Department. They're the ones who said to the Texas drillers who were fracking for 60 years in oil shale rock in Texas to extract oil. The Penn State geologists told the Texas drillers, we've done seismic testing in Pennsylvania. There's a big thick layer of bedrock above the Marcellus Shale. There's a big thick layer of bedrock below the Marcellus Shale. That's called an encapsulated formation. It's a contained area. They can't build pressure up to create the pressure to crack the shale open unless it is a contained area. So if we didn't have a contained area, an encapsulated geological formation, fracking would never work in Pennsylvania. So that's what brought it here. The first Marcellus well was drilled in 2004 in Washington County by Range Resources, and it was successful. And then that's what brought on the Marcellus boom into Pennsylvania. That really, the boom started in 2008. And so, but fracking has been going on here since 2004, 20 years.
How does the DEP feel about you fracking?
They're the ones who give the permits to drill. I can tell you, my mother, we have property in Somerset County. My mother signed a gas lease in 1985. It was a deep gas well. It was 8,600 feet deep. Before the Marcellus came along, the deep wells were called the Oriskany Sandstone Formation wells. They were where two plates collided and a cavity would open up and gas would collect in that cavity. And that was a deep well. So that meant that it had to be unitized, and other property owners got to receive royalties along with us because it was a deep well. Deep wells have to be unitized where lots of property owners get to receive royalties. Anyway, my mother's well, I'm not bringing it up because it's my mother's well. I'm bringing it up because within 2,500 feet is the Jenner Township Municipal Water Authority that feeds an entire community. The DEP would have never approved that drilling permit to drill that 8,600 foot well if it was a problem for that water authority, because they had their reservoir there, water treatment, and water tanks to feed Jenner Township is a small community, don't get me wrong. It's not like anything like North Huntington. But nevertheless, it was drilled that close in that time. That was in 1988 when that well was drilled. So I'm just giving that as an example.
Thank you.
Sir, I have a question for you. The wellhead where this proposed drilling would be done from is not even in North Huntington Township.
No,
Is that correct?
no, it's in Sewickley Township.
And it's by St. Edward's Church, correct?
That's right.
That's what you stated
That's right.
last time.
There'll be actually, I think when I was here last, I told you 7 wells.
Yes.
There are 7 wells drilled this direction toward Barnes Lake Road.
Right.
There's 1 well that's being drilled the opposite direction, so there's really 8 wells that'll be drilled off that well pad.
So visibly in our township, there will not be new, if this is passed, there will not be new wells that are visible. Anything that's being proposed with this agreement would be invisible and unknown to anybody that used those parks, that used any part of the township, correct?
The Indian Lake Park is not part of our drilling unit.
Right.
It's not part of our, Apex has no plans to drill underneath Indian Lake. Where's the other park in
Ocala
relation?
Park.
Where is it
I
in
don't
relation
think that's
to
the proper area either.
No,
That's not even in
The
here.
area we're talking about is a portion of land between Park Meadows and Falcon Ridge. It's just a landlocked area that no one wants, so the township owns.
And I
Oh,
believe
you're
it's,
talking about your lease, the lease, potential lease
Yeah.
for here.
Yes,
Yeah,
this
yeah,
lease
right.
specifically is
Right,
what
right,
we're
right.
talking about.
and I believe it's a wooded rural area where there are no residents.
But I wanted you to know for sure that
Yeah.
there's no connection with
Right.
Indian Lake.
Right.
There's no plans to drill under Indian Lake, not from Apex.
But I just wanted people to know too that there is going to be nothing visible. There will be no way for anybody even using that area to know that you are drilling 8,000 feet below the surface.
No,
correct?
the lease is a non-surface lease,
Right.
which puts it in writing that nothing will be touched on the land. It's put in writing that they won't do anything on the land.
Thank you.
It's actually, brought along some little maps for you to look at, if you didn't mind if I just go through those real quick, because I want to, it'll lead up to the last page. The top page just shows, I just want you to know how in Pennsylvania, there's no gas from Bedford County over. We live where the gas is. If you look at the next map, it shows the Marcellus Shale, where it is. It follows the same area, the Appalachian Mountain Range. That's the pink map. Then the next map shows what it looks like when they drill the wells, shows the well pad on the top of the page, and then it shows each well's drilled individually, and they're drilled parallel with each other. They're drilled approximately 700 feet apart. Fracking is only efficient up to 350 feet on each side of the well bore. So the wells are drilled parallel to each other, approximately 700 feet apart. And so when you go to the last page, is an example of the drilling unit, the yellow one. So I can't, the actual drilling unit map is proprietary. I can't show it. But I can show you an example here. So if you look at this drilling unit map, and in this case, it's showing 6 wells. If you look at the far left well, that would be the well that's involved with your property. I mean, this obviously is not your property. This is in Indiana County, this map. But I want you to just see well pads down at the bottom, and each well was drilled parallel to each other. Your property is at the very end of the left-hand well. If you remember that map I left with you when I was here last, that was to show you where the well bore ended. It ends right in your property. It's not going past it. And keep in mind, even though the last part of the well bore is plugged with cement, even though it's plugged, that's where it'll be plugged, under your property. But that doesn't affect your royalties. As long as you're inside the boundary of the drilling unit, the red boundary on this drilling unit, as long as anybody's property is inside that boundary, they get their royalties based on how many acres they own versus the size of the drilling unit. So I just use this. This is one that I've used a long time ago. It used to be a drilling unit, used to be around 600 acres, 640 acres. Now they're 800, 1,000. But so every property that's inside here shares in the royalties. They don't have to drill under somebody's property for them to get the royalties. As long as you're inside the boundary of the outline of the unit, you receive royalties. So if it was a 600 acre unit and you had 1 acre, you'd have 1/600th of a share. It's a fractional ownership when it comes to royalties.
Can you just again speak of what the financial terms? And I know we have them in front of us.
Let's talk about that lease you talked about before, how long it lasts. That one, Oakford Park, I think.
Oak Hollow.
Yeah, okay. Those leases are, they usually have a clause in them that will keep the lease alive for years. And the reason for that is because they intend to come back at a later date to drill the Utica Shale. The Utica Shale is 13,000 feet deep. There's only 2 formations to drill in Pennsylvania, the Marcellus Shale and the Utica Shale. So the Marcellus is it varies, it undulates between 7,000 and 8,000 feet. The Utica is approximately 13,000 feet. So gas companies will have a clause in their leases, and it's called a shut-in royalty clause. The shut-in royalty clause is where they will pay a small amount of money each year after all of, I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, sorry. I tell people, generally, you can figure on 8 to 10 years of royalties from the Marcellus Shale. It may be longer than that. I'm being conservative with the number of years. So let's say 10 years have passed. You've received your last royalty check from the Marcellus Shale. That's when the gas company would activate the shut-in royalty clause. The shut-in royalty clause would give you only a few dollars per acre per year. They would pay you an annual fee each year to keep that lease alive. And that's how it goes. And they'll pay that until they come back and drill the Utica. And when they drill the Utica, then you get a whole nother set of an additional set of royalties all over again when they drill the Utica, because the lease covers both formations.
I did pull up the one for Oak Hollow, and there is a shut-in provision of $15 per net acre per annum, if that's what you're looking for.
And from one gas company to another, it can vary between $5 per acre per annum to $25. It all depends. The gas companies over the years, they've lots of different numbers on that. But that's the general area, $5 to $25.
But just
This-
to clarify, your arms, your lateral arms will not reach out to Oak Hollow Park. Is that correct?
Where is that park?
No.
That's up by
it-
Penn
it's
Trafford.
Nowhere near it.
Nowhere near it. So I just want that for the record, that
Right, right.
your lateral arms, after you've gone 8,000 feet down and you're bending, that lateral arm won't even be anywhere near Oak Hollow Park.
As long as you know where that park is, I don't know where that park is. I just know I know when you drive Barnes Lake Road and go hit Clay Pike and turn left toward Hermione, Indian Lake's on the right. I know we're not there, okay?
Yeah.
That I know, because even before the intersection of Clay Pike and Barnes Lake Road, our drilling unit ends right past Woodridge.
Okay.
Woodridge is that is the boundary, the furthest boundary toward Clay Pike. Okay.
Can you tell us why we were told last month that we had until June 30th to sign this lease?
I can
And
tell
that
you
was
why.
it?
I can tell you why. It was because we knew you have monthly meetings, and we wanted to have our leasing done by July 10th. That was the only reason. We
So
figured-
it was for your
Oh,
convenience?
I don't deny that, right?
Okay.
But I did.
Well,
I did
that's
say I
not
was very unhappy.
necessarily the way it was presented to us.
Well, I regret that, and I didn't mean, the company certainly wanted me to work hard to get June 30th. I can't deny it, but in the meantime, it was based on the idea that we were hoping not to roll into another month. That was really the goal. And so I regret that I didn't word that maybe the way I should have.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm a little sensitive, like
I appreciate it.
Solicitor Dice, about us being rushed into everything.
Yeah, yeah. I understand. And keep in mind, we did not know that you owned the oil and gas rights on that property. We thought that the fellow from Apollo owned the oil and gas rights under all 22 acres. We didn't know until a title search uncovered the fact that the North Huntington Municipal Authority owned a piece, and also the township owned a piece. And that's when I was given the orders to march forward and talk to you about it. And it was at the last minute, and I wasn't happy about coming here to talk about something in a quick situation either. I would have been here a long time ago if it would have been a situation where, there wasn't a deadline. And that we're practically done leasing. For all intents and purposes, this would be the last lease in the project. Just saying.
Thank you.
I do have a couple of questions before we move on. So is this, if we vote no to this, will it stop the drilling?
Won't stop the drilling.
No.
It'll stop the drilling right before your property line.
Okay.
They can't drill underneath your property unless they have a lease.
Okay. But it won't stop the project at all?
Oh, no.
No.
No. No, it just means that the well bores will stop at the property line that was right below you. And if you don't mind, I'd like to just tell you, mention a situation there. Below your property is 16 acres. There's a 16-acre parcel there that a property owner, the landowner does not own the rights. The oil and gas rights are owned by somebody else. They had a Pittsburgh attorney who asked Apex for $2,000 an acre and 18% royalty. And Apex turned down both of those requests. And they stuck with what our offer has been, which our offer is the same as all of your constituents get. The $1,500 per acre and the royalty's the same. So it makes it a little difficult because if you if we give somebody more money, then it looks like we're kind of like the used car salesman thing that people don't like, and we don't want to be accused of that either, you know. And there are lots of good used car salesmen, don't get me wrong, you know. But I'm just saying that it is the same offer that everybody else is getting, including the large developers. The same identical lease to the letter, to the dollar amount, to the letter, to the period. It's the same lease that they signed. So I've just wanted to say that, that's all.
My other question was, have the surrounding property owners all signed off already?
Yeah.
Okay. Those were my two questions. The other one was answered already. Does anybody else have anything for the gentleman from Apex?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome.
Item number 3, New Hope Drive and Isabella Drive road dedication to the township. Those roads are ready to be dedicated to the township, so next week you will see a motion or action item to advertise for the ordinance to take over those roads. Item number 4, intergovernmental cooperation during a disaster with neighboring municipalities. Sherry Martino, the manager at Irwin Borough, brought this to our manager group of Trafford and Penn Township and Manor Borough in North Irwin, just trying to gauge some interest from those municipalities, whether or not if they want to start to negotiate some type of multi-municipal agreement. For example, she brought up was if there's a disaster of a bunch of trees in the road that just happened recently on the July 4th holiday, what type of help each municipality can assist with the other municipality with tree cleanup, debris cleanup, and what type of reimbursement or compensation would happen during that, and outline insurance, who would pay for the insurance if an employee got hurt. I understand some of those municipalities don't have unions. We do have a union, so we'd have to get it vetted through our union if North Huntington is interested to partake in some of those negotiations. It would have to be involved with our union as well, because, you know, they have stipulations on overtime and call outs and things of that nature. So if we were to entertain this and move forward, there would have to be language that we would need to be paid like double time or double time and a half for enough to cover those call outs for those employees. So this is more of just a gauge, a level of interest.
I wouldn't be interested in it at all. I mean, I think we're the largest community, probably with the most employees that we could support. Not against not helping our other communities. I think we would if we were in a bind. But I think if we get into intergovernmental agreement, it would hold us to actually picking up the phone if we were called. And I imagine if something happened in our community, not saying the storm can't hit one of our neighbors, not us, but I'm sure we would have enough to deal with in our own community. I know Director Albert always spoke that they're running a pretty lean machine down there at Public Works, and we could utilize other departments as well. But just with your example, I don't know if we have the staffing available to go help neighboring communities when we'd probably be dealing with the similar situation.
And we do have in the fee schedule, if another municipality were to use any of our services, there's in our fee schedule of how much we charge for the truck, the manpower, things of that nature. So if they did do a request or wanted to request a street sweeper with a man or two, we already have that ability to invoice them through our fee schedule. It's just a matter of them calling us and seeing if we have any resources available at that time. So,
I wouldn't necessarily be against this, because you see all the time, a tornado can go through a neighborhood and wipe houses out on one side of the street and nothing else is touched. We can have a tornado come through and take out our whole public works department, and then what? Then we're begging other communities to come help us. I mean, I don't have a problem with looking into something like that. For something major that would occur. I mean, if a major tornado rolls through downtown Irwin and wipes out a whole neighborhood down there, we're gonna wanna go help them.
I would agree, and I'm not saying that we can't, but if we join an intergovernmental agreement, it's going to hold us to helping them. So if they pick up the phone, even if we are dealing with the similar situation, we will be obligated to.
Depending on the language in there, I think
Yeah.
I would be okay with looking at language where where we're covered there. I mean, if we can help, if we're not attending to a disaster in our own communities, I think we can get language in it. I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to it. It's not meaning that I'm sold on it. I wouldn't be opposed to looking at something about it, but.
I agree with Commissioner Haggis that, number one, this doesn't solve a problem for North Huntington. What problem are we trying to solve? Someone else's? I don't want to be locked in, like you said. I think if there's an emergency, we all help each other. We have mutual aid agreements with the fire departments, everything. I mean, if we have to be there and can be, I'm sure we will. I don't like getting locked into a agreement they can hold up and go, well, you let us down here, maybe we couldn't help right then. So I'm with Zach.
I have a concern about this as well. We also have another agreement, excuse me, with the school district where we're supposed to provide crossing guards in exchange for recreation programs, and we seem to be the only ones upholding the end of the bargain on that one as well. So, and we all would like to think that the school district would be friendly to us as well, and it appears that that's not the case. So, I would be leery into entering into an agreement, but I think I would need more information. I probably want to see something before we move forward. I don't know, it's up to the board if they want to have Harry flush it out at all and bring it back to us, or if we just want to move on.
Right there, right now, there is no draft agreement. It's just a gauge of level of interest. So if you wanted to, you could wait till the other municipalities, if they do decide to move forward, to see what that agreement is. And if you're interested, if they come back to us and say, hey, do you want to sign on to it, we could take a look at that agreement, maybe tweak some terms on our end.
That makes sense.
I'm good with that. That's what I said.
Yeah, I think this may have been brought forth because of what happened over the Independence holiday. It was labeled that tornado was an F2, and it touched down 4 times. It hit Winchester Road and Murraysville Road going in the Trafford portion, and really, I tell you guys, it's in Ward 7. Get yourself up Murraysville Road, and you ought to see the size of the trees that wind twisted. It's amazing what wind can do. And then it bounced, and then it hit 3 other places, and one of those places was out by Harrison City.
Bushy Run.
At Bush, and boy, oh boy, right, Tom? Bushy Run, Battlefield, my God. That whole right side, unbelievable amount of carnage. I think the reason why this was brought up was maybe just a kind of a neighborly thing. And I get it. We should all pull together, and I think that we would in the event that something would have happened. But I think at the same time, and this is where I agree with Commissioner Zona, and then I find myself also agreeing with Commissioners Gray and Haggis in saying that we've got to be careful. And Ron Zona said, well, let's look at the specific wording so we don't get kind of caught. Everybody has really valid points on this, and I get what everybody's saying, but I think all in all it's done as a fielding agent to see, can we be neighborly with everybody else? I certainly hope that we could, and would, in fact, but I think that it warrants further investigation. I do. We're all on this planet to help each other, are we not? Trying to make the best of a tough situation at times.
Commissioner Goss, I'd have to definitely agree with you. The fact of a binding agreement probably would be tough, but everybody knows me. I'm going to say it, love thy neighbor. And, common sense. This is not rocket science. It's not brain surgery. Just what we've just all gone through. Like you said, Independence Day with tornado touchdown. I've seen some devastation. Unfortunately, we just lost the young gentleman cutting down a tree, fell from the tornado. So there again, I believe that all of us in North Huntington would all pitch in and do what's right. But then there again, to obligate maybe Public Works or somebody with a contract saying, hey, this is your agreement, I'm not saying that we would like to tie into that, but I think as neighbors, we'd all pitch in to help.
Kind of like a handshake agreement.
Agree.
From how I'm judging the board, I think that if this comes any farther and there is something put on paper, we would like to look at it before we agree to it.
Okay.
It's okay?
Good solution.
And that is the end of my discussion topics.
Thank you, Manager Falk. Planning and engineering topics. Director Fonzie.
Yes, thank you. We had 2 items come through the Planning Commission last week, 2 subdivisions. The first subdivision is Subdivision 7 of 2024, the Balone, Jellison, and Harris Plan. And these are 2 properties, adjacent properties on Baker School Road. And as you can see, as it sits now, the James Balone property is 0.413 acres, and he's wanting to add 0.641 acres from the Jellison and Harris property, which is yellow, at 5.7 acres. So after the boundary line revision, it's going to end up with something like this. So he's basically doubling his lot size, getting a rear buffer there. There was no sewage planning needed, as this is just a pure land swap. And the Planning Commission recommended this for approval by a vote of 4-0. Any questions on that one? Okay, and the second subdivision is Subdivision 8 of 2024, the Natali consolidation. And these are 2 lots on Linmore Drive. So this is the area of the township where you have to go outside of North Huntington to come back in. The Legends plan is actually, you can see the single-family attached homes on the top part of the aerial photo there. And the Natali's, Anthony and Krista Natali, own both lots. One has their house and one is vacant. So they simply want to join the 2 together and create one lot that is 0.55 acres. Both lots now are identical in size. So again, there's no sewage planning needed as they're appending it to their home lot. And Planning Commission recommended this for approval 4-0 as well. Any questions on that one? That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Fonzie. Does anybody have anything for old business? Any further board comments?
Yes, if I can. I just kind of, right before I came to this meeting tonight, I was just scrolling through Facebook, and it was enlightening to know that the local businesses, with the extreme heat that we've been having and the emergencies that we've been having throughout the community with our fire, police, and EMS, that these local businesses are pitching in. One just donated a whole pallet of water that went to our police and our fire departments. So kudos to those businesses paying attention and seeing what our EMS first responders are out facing. So thank you to them.
Thank you, Commissioner Al. Anybody else have anything?
Motion adjourned.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Haggis, second by Commissioner Zona to adjourn. Any further discussion? All those in favor by stating aye. Aye. Meeting adjourned at 8:37 PM.
Didn't hurt.
Okay.
Kick those links, buddy.
For the stuff about the sports complex, the idea is that Sylvester is going to negotiate.
They're going to go through and take care of the legalese and then bring it back to the board for us to review and discuss.
So that would be one solicitor.
Yes.
Do you have any idea when they bring that back to this?
As soon as they get through it, I know they're going to do their due diligence, and they're going to take the time necessary to make sure it looks right. So, like I said, we're really in no rush. We're going to take our time and do what we need to do to get it right.
No, I was asking about the. Yeah, so is the idea back to the back on the next meeting to practice?
Yes, it'll be on the agenda. Whether or not it's voted on or tabled again is up to the board.
Okay, thank you so much.
Sure thing.
It's just, it's not listed on the agenda.
No, it's not.
And it wasn't in the trip article.
Right, the details of the release or non-public exec session.
Last month, they said
Yeah, the parcel ID, so the residents don't know how to use GIS. So like, I mean, my remarks didn't reference what part, the residents just don't speak broadly, but yes.
I find it as a challenge. How do we get the information out there to the residents? You know, like you said, they don't have HGIS. You know, there's only so much, like, for me, I can't get it. We can't put like a whole page on it for emotion. You know what I mean? We'll be here all night, but like.
I'll tell you what I'll do, like, in future communications we have with the public, we'll be very precise, we'll show them. But that's where their confusion came from, I think. And then the other thing I wanted to mention, just like, I mean, this guy came up here and he admitted he lied to you last meeting. That should be concerning. And, the only reason these fracking surfactants were found on the surface, they got there somehow. I know it's 8,000 feet down, but anyway, if you'd be open to it, I'd like to set up a meeting with you or any of the commissioners who are interested in meeting with the residents. I'm happy to bring the scientific materials. I'm not going to speak for in any kind of like emotional capacity or like relationship to the land. This isn't my town, but I'm happy to facilitate a meeting if you'd be interested.
Yeah, I think we can run that by, see if we'd be interested in doing something like that. I'm not sure. We'd have to speak with the fellow members of the board.
Yeah, I
Just one
understand.
person, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, if they're interested in it, I mean, I'm all for education.
Yeah.
So, like Commissioner Goss always says, we need good information to make good decisions.
Absolutely. Well, we'll put out an email tonight letting folks know where it's located, just so hopefully that doesn't come up from anybody that we're in touch with in the future. And then
Yeah.
I'll email you your emails on your website. Yeah.
You email me already all the time.
Do I? Are you on our mailing list?